Hello everyone. Hope you all are good and hope that you have studied previous lectures of chapter 5 from part 2 that we have been doing from past 2 lectures. Yes, which is accounting ratios and analysis. In the very first lecture from this chapter, we have understood the definition of accounting ratio. We have understood about the classification of ratios. That means we have considered a topic which says the classification of ratios, which is traditional classification and functional classification. I have also presented about the terms in which ratios are presented. Yes, ratios can be presented in the terms of proportion, in terms of percentage, in terms of times. This is the topic that we have considered from page number 213. Further, it has 2 more points on the very next page that I failed to present in first lecture, and that's the reason I'm going to present it here. Yes? So on page number 214, the additional 2 points, 4th and 5th, is given on page number 214 about presentation of ratios. It is in terms of fraction, in terms of days, weeks, months. Yes? Kindly consider these points in your mind as I forgot to mention this in first lecture. Yes? Thereafter, we have understood about profitability ratios. The topic is given on page number 215. About profitability ratios, we have seen that there are 4 ratios in it, and these ratios are calculated in terms of percentage. These ratios are calculated to measure profitability. Yeah? So this is the third lecture for chapter 5, accounting ratios and analysis. And let us see what is our topic for today. Yes, I forgot to mention about lecture 2. In lecture 2, the exact previous lecture to this, we have understood about operating ratio. In first lecture, we have studied gross profit ratio, and in second lecture, we have understood about operating ratio. I have explained the formula in detail. I have taught you people how to obtain operating expenses, which expenses are to be considered at the time of calculating operating ratio. Yes? So these many points we have understood. On the basis of these 2 ratios, we have solved several illustrations and also the related sums in exercise. So let us see what is our topic for today. The very next ratio, operating profit ratio from profitability ratios, given on page number 220. I repeat, operating profit ratio is given on page number 220 in your textbook. Yes? You should have your textbook while you study this lecture. When you watch this lecture, actually, operating profit ratio, a proper image has been captured and has been presented on your screen. Let us understand the meaning. This ratio discloses relationship between operating profit and sales. As the definition itself clarifies, it is a relationship between 2 accounting figures. This is an income-based ratio. If you remember, the ratio that we have studied previous to this was cost-based ratio. This is income-based ratio. So obviously, incomes are to be considered. While understanding operating ratio, we have considered operating expenses. Why? Because it is cost-based ratio. Yes? So it shows the proportion of operating profit to sales. So the very first question presented here is, what is operating profit? It is sales minus operating cost. You need to write down this point in your book. Finally, talking about its formula, it says operating profit ratio equals to operating profit upon net sales into 100. So first of all, what is operating profit? It is given prior to the formula. Operating profit, sales minus operating cost. Obviously, you know well what is sales. But what is operating cost? Yes, that we need to understand. Yeah. So obviously we'll understand it while solving sums. So not to worry. Let us read ahead the objective. This ratio indicates that how much is profit earned by the unit from the business in which unit deals. To determine this ratio in alternative way, assume the sales as 100% and deduct operating ratio from it. The remaining percentage will be operating profit ratio. This point also you will understand while explaining the practical illustrations and sums. Yes, since this ratio is income based, the increasing trend of it indicates enhancement in profit. Obviously, if it is income based ratio, then an increasing trend of this ratio obviously indicates enhancement in profit. Yes? So moving towards illustration 8, which is given just below operating profit ratio. The question says, see, obviously you remember the formula by now. What is the formula for operating profit ratio? It is operating profit upon sales into 100. The only question is that how to obtain operating profit. That you will easily understand while solving an illustration. But the important thing here is to remember to memorize the main formula. So the formula for operating profit ratio is operating profit upon net sales into 100. Yes? So illustration 8, it says from the following information of H Limited, calculate operating profit ratio. Sales 7,50,000, cost of goods sold rupees 3 lakh, operating expenses rupees 1,50,000. This much information is given and they are asking us to find out operating profit ratio. Yes? So on the very next page, on page number 221, the solution to this illustration is given. Yes, you might be having 100 of questions in your mind that ma'am, nothing related to operating profit ratio content is given in the question except for sales. Then how do we obtain operating profit ratio? Yes, but listen to me very carefully. Let me finish explaining this sum. Let me finish the explanation and then all your doubts will be clear. Yeah? In this sum, in the given illustration, we'll be finding operating ratio first. Yes? And we'll deduct it from 100%. And also we are having other option. So let us begin. It says operating profit ratio equals to operating profit upon sales into 100. This we know very well. And we also know what is the formula for operating profit. Operating profit equals to sales minus operating cost. This is presented here. Yes? Operating profit and formula for operating profit ratio. That we have written here. So now the only Problem is how to obtain operating cost. So the formula for that even is presented here. Operating cost equals to COGS plus operating expense. Now the amount for both of this is given in the question. COGS is 3 lakh, operating expenses is 1,50,000. So operating cost is 4,50,000. Now with the help of this, we can obtain the amount of operating profit. Sales minus operating cost. What is sales? It is given in the question. How much is sales? It is 7,50,000. So 7,50,000 minus 4,50,000. What is 4,50,000? It is operating cost. How did you obtain operating cost? COGS plus operating expenses. So 7,50,000 minus 4,50,000 gives you 3 lakh. So 3 lakh is the amount of operating profit. Finally, if you substitute all the figures in the formula, operating profit 3 lakh upon 7,50,000, which is sales, into 100 gives you 40%. 40% is the answer for operating profit ratio. Now an option to this. Operating profit ratio equals to 100% minus operating ratio. This is an optional formula for obtaining operating profit ratio. You may please write down this formula while writing all the formulas in your book. You will write down the formula for operating profit first of all. Then you will write down for operating profit ratio. Next, you will write down the formula for operating cost. Then for operating profit ratio, again, which is 100% minus operating ratio. Now you know very well how to obtain operating ratio. Yes, operating ratio is the second ratio from profitability ratios that we have learned. Yes? So what is the formula for operating ratio? It is cost of goods sold plus operating expenses upon sales into 100. This is the formula for calculating operating ratio. So operating ratio can be easily obtained. All the three figures are given in the question. What is cost of goods sold? It is 3 lakh. What is operating expenses? 1,50,000. What is the amount of sales? 7,50,000. Yes, into 100. So the answer obtained for operating ratio is 60%. Yes, the answer for operating ratio is 60%. Now if you will substitute this figure in the optional formula which is given, which is operating profit ratio equals to 100% minus operating ratio. So 100% minus operating ratio is 60%. The answer which is obtained is 40% and is the answer for operating profit ratio, which is 40% again. So the given illustration can be solved in two ways. Yes, you have to present only one way in your paper, in your exam, in your test. Yes, the answer is similar by both the formulas. Yes, fine then, we've completed illustration 8 here and we are going to start with the next illustration, which is illustration 9. Illustration 9 is given on page number 221 in your textbook. Illustration 9. From the following information of J Company Limited given below, calculate operating profit ratio. Opening stock 60,000, purchase 5 lakh, purchase expenses 20,000, office expenses 50,000, interest paid, dividend received, depreciation, loss due to accident, sales, closing stock, sales return, income tax. This much information is given. On the basis of this information, you have to calculate operating profit ratio. Yes? Firstly, before you solve any kind of sum, you need to be clear with all of its formulas. Let us revise what is the formula for operating profit ratio. It is operating profit upon sales into 100. What is the formula for operating profit? Sales minus operating cost. What is the formula for operating cost? Cost of goods sold plus operating expenses. What is included in operating expenses? Administrative expenses, sales expenses, administrative and office expenses are same. Then sales expenses plus depreciation, employee benefit expenses, etc., etc. And what is the formula for obtaining cost of goods sold? Obviously, opening stock plus purchase expenses minus closing stock. You'll obtain the amount of cost of goods consumed or cost of goods sold. Further, factory expenses or wages is not given. So, cost of goods consumed itself becomes cost of goods sold. If you don't remember this formula, let me revise this. It is given on page number 215. The long formula for obtaining COGS. We have understood at the time of calculation of gross profit ratio. Yes? Okay, so you may please revise the same. Now let us begin with the sum. Okay, the solution to this sum is given on page number 221. Firstly, if you will see, the formula for operating profit ratio is given, which is operating profit upon sales into 100. Operating profit, net sales minus operating cost. So firstly, let us find out the amount of net sales. Sales minus sales return. In the given question, you are provided with sales 8 lakh, sales return 30,000. So what is net sales? Obviously 7,70,000. Next thing that you are supposed to obtain is operating cost. What is operating cost? COGS plus operating expenses. COGS is not readily given in the question. You need to find out COGS. And the formula for finding out COGS is what? Opening stock. See, the content is given. Opening stock 60,000 plus purchase 5 lakh plus purchase expense 20,000 gives you 5,80,000 minus closing stock. Closing stock is given 70,000 in the last line of the question. So cost of goods sold 5,10,000. Yes? As per the formula which is given on page number 215, Yes, your doubt is understood that ma'am, it is cost of goods consumed. But in the given question, you are not provided with wages or factory expenses. So cost of goods consumed itself becomes cost of goods sold. Yes? Nothing to worry. Further, so COGS is obtained. What is cost of goods sold? 5,10,000. What is the formula for operating cost? It is COGS plus operating expenses. COGS is obtained 5,10,000 plus operating expenses. Now what is included in operating expenses that we need to find out from this question? Yes, office expenses, of course, office expenses and administrative expenses. So firstly we have added 50,000 to COGS, 5,10,000. Further, interest paid is financial expense, is not included in operating expense. Dividend received is an income, cannot be included. Depreciation, yes. So depreciation is taken here, 40,000. Then loss due to accident, no. Nothing now. So COGS 5,10,000 plus operating expenses, which is total 90,000. So operating cost this way is 6 lakh rupees. Yes? Alright then, obtaining operating profit on the basis of net sales that we have obtained, 7,70,000, and then operating cost 6 lakh. So putting these figures in the formula of operating profit, it is 7,70,000 minus 6 lakh, which gives you 1,70,000. So 1,70,000 is operating profit. Now putting this in the first main formula of operating profit ratio gives you 1,70,000 upon 7,70,000, which is the amount of net sales, into 100. And the answer for operating profit ratio is 22.08%. All the profitability ratios are always presented in terms of percentage. Yes? So this way we have obtained operating profit ratio, the answer for which is 22.08%. It is compulsory to put a sign of percentage besides the answer that you obtain. Alright? Fine then. We are done with the illustrations of operating profit ratio, illustration number 8 and 9. So we have a sum related to this in your exercise that you are supposed to do in homework today, which is sum number 6. See, it clearly says, from the following information, calculate operating ratio and operating profit ratio. Yes? And the sum can be solved in both the manners. This is similar to illustration 8 mostly. So what you are going to do is that you will obtain operating ratio first. Then you will obtain operating profit ratio, just the way we have solved illustration 8. See here. Yes? Obviously you know how to find out operating ratio. We have learned in the previous lecture, lecture 2. Yes? So it is not difficult for you. You will solve sum number 6 from exercise as homework for today. Yes? Okay. So the next ratio to operating profit ratio is net profit ratio, which is given on page number 222 in your textbook. Yes? Let us see that. We are not going to solve sums on the basis of this ratio in today's lecture, but obviously we'll understand it a bit. You will learn the same so that I can explain it in a better manner in next lecture. Yes, on page number 222, the formula is given. This you are supposed to read and write it down once in your fair book. This is the formula for net profit ratio. Yes, and the illustrations further. That we'll be doing in the next lecture. Yes, your homework is sum number 6 only for today. So that's all. We'll see you in the next lecture soon. Till then, stay home, stay safe and study well.